Good evening, everybody. My name is Kenneth Pruitt. I use he, him pronouns. I am the curator and host of Poetry at the Point, currently online. We are a monthly reading series organized by the St. Louis Poetry Center. I'm super excited to be with you this evening. I am equally as excited to bring you the poetry of Felicia Clemens, William Youngblood, and Jenny Mueller. Welcome to all of you. I'm super excited to hear all of you read. Before we get started, the usual quick announcements. One is that the St. Louis Poetry Center turns 75 years old this year. In addition to our fancy new look, which you can see on the top right corner of your screen there, a bit of, we have commemorative activities in the works. So keep your eyes peeled for those. So our plans for returning to in-person events are sort of still month to month, and they are being impacted by now hopefully the end of the Delta surge. I feel like I just cursed it by just saying that out loud. But we're taking things 1 month at a time. So please stay tuned to our social media accounts. We are virtual this month, but we, again, are taking it month to month. So please stay tuned, and we hope to return to live events, of course, distanced, masked, and all that good stuff coming very soon. Always want to thank our many members and supporters at the St. Louis Poetry Center. Always a huge shout out to the Missouri Arts Council specifically, whose generous support makes this particular series possible each year. On to some technical aspects of things. If you're watching this in real time on Facebook Live, pretty please comment and share that link. And also post your questions for the poets themselves. We will have some time at the end after these wonderful poets read to have some questions and answers after they're done. So please include those questions in the comments, and I'd love to incorporate those into the conversation. If you're viewing this after September 28th, I had to check the date to remember when the heck we are right now. Please still comment and share this posted video so we can continue to not only build support for this reading series, but also support for these particular poets. And we'll post some links on Facebook for you to support these poets by accessing more of their work and especially their books. So on now to the real business of the evening, which is poetry. First up is Felicia Clemens, who was born in Columbia, South Carolina, and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. She is the author of I Love My People and Other Black Thoughts, and an award winner of the 2018 Sue C. Boynton Poetry Contest in Bellingham, Washington. She holds a bachelor's of science degree in sociology from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. Shout out Nash Vegas. And is currently working on her doctorate in physical therapy at the Washington University in St. Louis. When she isn't writing or studying, she enjoys hiking, painting, and spending time with her cat, Maymuna. Without further ado, Felicia, please read us some poems.
All right. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me. Excited to be here, and let's get started. So this first poem is called BJCER Part 1. BJCER Part 1. A blur, a mixture of abandoned people, the addicts, the disabled, people of color, God's forgotten children, armed guards at the entrance and in the lobby, protecting the building and the employees from the riffraff. The shackled patient needs care, so the bartering begins. The staff advocates for the patient. Can we take off his handcuffs? He needs an x-ray. The guard refuses. He needs to stay in handcuffs. The patient mutates from person to thing, molded for labor, molded for entertainment, for anything but love. White coats and white faces attend broken Black bodies, a mixture of disdain and disgust. Cameras in the patient's room and a curtain give the illusion of privacy. No lock on the bathroom door, shared by all patients. No toilet seat, no sharps for cutting, rounded edges. A lone man in a wheelchair, slumped down from the weight of being, invisible to all. All right, so that was poem number 1. We're now going on to a poem called Cage. Cage. They let me out of my cage today, just long enough to perform and taste freedom. I smile for them, and they smile back, but I am not free. I focus on pleasing the crowd and not on the storm inside my head. It's easier that way. I am almost free, but not quite. Sometimes the true emotions bubble up and I drown them out again. Just when I think I can't take any more, it is over, and I am released from my burden and placed back in my cage. It is safe there, 4 walls, only the occasional prying eyes. I lay my head down and rest, gather my broken pieces, and reassemble them, get ready for the next performance. Okay, next one. It's called Coalesce. Coalesce. After we make love, I try to remember me, the pieces of me that I have kept, stored in my heart for safekeeping. Those parts rarely come out. They are locked away for fear of being burned. Yet, when I am with you, I feel beautiful and strange. Those hidden pieces break out of their cage and become song. All right. This next one is called The Perfect Cover. The perfect cover. Cover your head so no one touches your hair. Cover your body. Don't tempt anyone. Cover your skin so they don't know you're not white. Wouldn't want another tragic accident. Cover your tears with a smile. Cover your sadness with no eye contact, because then they'd see it. Cover yourself completely. Become invisible. Clothe yourself in darkness. Become smaller, less intimidating. There. Now you're perfect. Okay. It's so weird doing it online. All right, this next one's called Darkness. Darkness. Eyes closed. Darkness sets in. It calms you. In the dark, you can be who you want. Hide from piercing eyes and judgmental faces. Feel the darkness wrap you in its arms. It cradles you. This is peace. You are finally safe. A world without sight. What doesn't matter falls away. Nothing left but the good stuff. It calms you. Rest your uneasy bones and weary soul. Soak in the darkness. See what it teaches. All right. The next one is about the Japanese internment camps. It's called Desert Blossoms. Desert blossoms. In the dry, barren land, life sprouts forth, green and hungry. Community built in barns, newspaper-lined walls. Baseball played, Americans banished to a desolate land. Their crime, their home country, twice removed, thrice removed. Fear rounds them up, pride keeps them in. Out of the ashes, life prevails. Okay. All right, this next one is a little graphic, so if you're a little squirmish, maybe give it 2 minutes and then come back, because yeah, it's a bit graphic. So just a warning with that one, with this one. It's called First Cut. First cut. Cutting into human flesh, the knife slid easily through skin and fat. The sweet, sickening smell of formaldehyde invaded my nostrils. Underneath, a mess of fat and fascia, nerves and muscles. The structures hidden and convoluted. No map could prepare us for the reality of human anatomy. The mix of fat and flesh that stood between us and our targets. Our guides encouraged us to press on, pull back the skin, and hack away the fat. Cautiously, we cut, but not without destroying a vein here or a nerve there. Our guides told us to go deeper, our bodies bent forward, our hands slick from the mysterious liquid seeping up from the body's core. How bizarre to be so intimate with a stranger, a person whose gift gives us knowledge and a new appreciation of our own skin and bones. Slowly slicing through the tough fascia, revealing the mystery of what lied beneath. An untouched wonder, we unceremoniously chopped, identifying structures, questioning ourselves, our instructors, our paths in life that led us to this familiar yet foreign wonderland. Cool. All right. This next one is called Gone. Gone. The absence of your light is palpable. My world is void of color and light. The bathroom now seems too big. I don't want 2 mirrors, 2 sinks. I want you. The space feels as big as my grief. How can so much space feel so empty and heavy? The water was hot when I got in. Now it's cold. I don't want to get out and climb into an empty bed. Void of your space, your light, I sit and watch the shadows change. Light turns to dark. Finally, the dark matches my mood. The sun shines without you. The earth spins. The sun to rise and fall without you in it. I wish to disappear into your light, to have the world make sense again. We spent years building this room, matching the tiles to the wall, ornate mirrors, the tub fit for 2. None of that matters now. I would trade it all for you. This next one is about roller skating. Like many of you, I picked up a new hobby during the pandemic, and one of them was skating. Green. I focus on not being afraid. Let gravity carry me forward, faster and faster down the ramp. I don't know how to stop at this speed, or any speed really. So I let my wheels carry me into the grass. Grateful for the inertia, but the change in terrain throws me off balance, and I fall forward. Hands and knees now green. I laugh. Again. It's just a fun one. All right. This next one is called Imagine. Imagine. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which women can walk down the street without being verbally harassed. Let's imagine a different America, America in which Men do not think they have a right to a woman's body. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which the president is a woman and she fights for the voiceless. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which innocent people are not shot down in the street and given no justice. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which people are given a living wage and free health care. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which actions have consequences for all people, regardless of wealth, race, or sexual orientation. Let's imagine a different America, an America in which everyone is free, women, children, men, the entire spectrum of humanity is free. This next one is called Scars. Scars, inner thigh, upper arm. The wound festers, boils. The mark is dark, from skin rubbed raw, friction producing pain. A scar remains after the pain subsides, comes back after the next long run. I try to prevent it, to keep my skin from rubbing, heat building in between my thighs, to no avail. Sweat drips, salt worsens the pain. The shower shocks the damage into focus. Sharp pain, then it's gone. Band-Aids, Vaseline, they fail. Nothing stops the friction. Thigh on thigh, skin to skin, the consequence of flesh against flesh. This next one is called Scorekeeper. Scorekeeper. My body remembers things I want to forget. My body bleeds to make me listen. My body aches, soft whispers to my soul. My body heals despite my destruction. My body survives years of abuse, my own unlove. My body loves the broken soul within me. My body refuses to let me go. All right. I think we're getting close to being done, so I have lots more though. Okay. This next one is called the 255, and it was written when I was living in Washington State and taking public transportation everywhere. The 255. I notice her immediately. Her smile gushes. Heron perches on the edge of the highway. I wonder what causes her smile. I've never seen such joy. Below the bridge, water shimmers. Head covered in black, her face glowing. Lily pads float upon the pond. The trees bear witness. The world engulfed by the tiny screen. She cares not of her surroundings. Light reflects off of the water, a mix of light and dark. A heron takes flight, levitates over the lily pads, the water. Cars rush past. People hurry. She finds peace among the chaos, the heron quiet among the noise. Okay. This next one is called The Ethics of Touch. The Ethics of Touch. She is a young, white, 20-something with access to children's bodies. Authority given to her, taken lightly. The burden easy to bear. The patient is young too, not yet 20. Her history with the medical profession, precarious at best. It is a perfect storm, a recipe for disaster. The line between healing and hurting blurs. The patient is Black, the therapist white. In this small interaction comes the depth of US history, acknowledged or not. The patient screams in agony from authority's touch. I watch, uncomfortable, yes, but do nothing. Flashes of my own history of unwanted touch appear, disappear. I find that I cannot breathe. I find myself frozen in the past. And just as quickly, I'm back in the present, aware that these things aren't happening to me. Now I am the one in power, the one with some form of authority, deserved or not. My only question, where's the line? Okay, we're almost done. I have like 3 more, unless they tell me to stop. So we'll just go until they tell me. But yeah, 3 more. This next one's called The Opposite of Stevie. The opposite of Stevie. Fleeting is our love, the ribbon in the sky that slowly fades, stretched and pulled by the wind. There were times when I thought our love was permanent, solid as a rock. But our love is always changing. The once sturdy rock becomes 2, etched by water. That slow drip creates a dent, then a hole, then a cavern. Finally, the one becomes 2, never to be joined again. The 2 separate again and again until they become a million land stars. Almost there. 2 more. And the last 2 are pretty short and sweet. This next one is called Unbeing. Unbeing. I am unearthed, rootless, wading in the water, then sinking in the sea. Unhinged, unbound, undone. Adrift in a sea of madness, dazed and confused. Disoriented, disillusioned, without direction or purpose. Lost amongst the weeds. All right, so we're here, last one. And because I feel like most of my poetry is depressing, this one is kind of happy-ish. I don't know, I like it. Ending on one of my favorites. It's called Good Hair. Good hair, ethnic superstition, unkept naps, touched without permission, ironed, burned into submission, plucked, lithened through addition, wild tangles, pulled into partition, mysterious, magical, a crinkled, curly coalition. Thank you. I'm all done.
Thanks so much, Felicia. First of all, I just want to thank you for pointing out how odd it is to read on this platform in this era. Aaron Quick, our executive director, always mentions, and we've had readers say that it is like reading into a mirror. So thanks for pushing through that awkwardness. Before I push you back to the backstage, I'm not saying I do or don't work in healthcare, but I'm very interested in engaging a lot more about some of those poems. So yeah, keep those handy. Thanks for reading.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Next up is William Youngblood, who was born in near Los Angeles, California, and lives in St. Louis, Missouri, where he received his MFA in, I assume, poetry, from the Warsh U before serving as the 2018-2019 Poetry Junior Teaching Fellow. His work has appeared in Passages North and Prolit, we think that's how you pronounce it, magazine. William also won, and this was not in his bio, but he did win first place in this year's Nash Poetry Contest through the St. Louis Poetry Center for his poem, Father, What is the Distance Between Further and Farther? So, I can't give you anything because I'm not near you for having read that poem, but I wouldn't stop you from reading that poem too. So, no pressure. William, take it away.
All right. Hello, Facebook. I'll try not to talk too much between them because I think there's probably enough of me in the poems. Unless I absolutely need to explain something like this. The title of this poem flows into the first line. It's called Portrait of a Man, Probably. Portrait of a man, probably, in velvet and linen, with a collar of lace probably purchased at great expense, possibly made by hand to order, perhaps just stepping out, probably to the theater, doubtless running late and disturbing the performance, or arriving home earlier than expected, intruding on a scene staged for his displeasure, maybe mildly concerned, judging by the eyes. Probably actually almost certainly sitting in a studio, presumably in London, owned by a painter, believably Dutch or Flemish, likely for hours, if not days, at least for charcoal studies, if not for the oils themselves. Plausibly a member of Parliament, as like as not of the Lords, though conceivably nothing of the sort. Feasibly the dedicatee of Hobbes' Leviathan, one might assume more than mildly concerned by the circumstances of his moment, the deposition and death of kings, the long wound of civil unrest, strife unknown since the anarchy, though no doubt painted with all this still ahead, mayhaps for a healthy commission. Of moderate financial value at best, at first glance of little artistic value beyond the meager merit of its technical details, its play of light and dark, falling short of the old masters, perhaps, its effect just shy of probably intended regality, like two children trying on their father's clothes. In all likelihood, not often thought about, little noticed, not to receive a second glance. Probably not much else to be said, other than it looks a little like a friend of mine, considerably. This next one is called The Subject of the Hurricane. They had gone out into it, pummeling rain and lacerating cyclonic wind, hoping to avoid the eye, which would surely have found them had they stayed in one place, he wanting only to embrace her, and she not comprehending that this was a desire of which he was capable. So they stopped a while and looked on the harbor, its ships tossed about in roiling spray like giant styrofoam cabbages, and were duly impressed with the seriousness of the scene. Well, shit, he said. Yes, she replied. Quite right. Quite right. I agree. One of my friends is texting me trying to get me to break during this performance. I won't. A gathering. The question of the lamppost, the question of the storm clouds, the question of this pampas grass swaying. The summer light slanting through the trees tinged with a pall of autumn sludging on to winter. Millions of cats descend on the homestead, each demanding its saucer, and I, having recently sold the last remaining cow, begin desperately to bargain in increasingly unreasonable terms. Soon I am all out of arms and legs. Thunder bends the distance and curious electricities dance upon the weather vane. Talk about potent stuff. The weight evaporates, the field embrowns itself, and we have finally turned a corner, though into what? A kind of cul-de-sac backing onto the coast. Such things seem to happen without warning or explanation, but I can't say I mind much, though alarm rings faintly behind the eyes, as I vault the breakwater to the bay, where the humpbacks, singing their own intricate songs on the too close horizon, breach, slap their tails on the sea, resist the uses to which we put them. Let me see. Lots of weird animals show up in weird places in a lot of the poems that I have been writing over the past few years. There's also strange animals in this next one. It's called Suburban House Fire with Wildebeests. The day came with wildebeests at no extra charge, and your hair was on fire. I mean, a real Moses and the burning bush type deal. So we ran your head under the faucet for what seemed like hours, and when the water wouldn't work, we tried all sorts of liquids, milk and orange juice, seltzer and Coca-Cola, and just for kicks, vodka and mulled wine, absinthe and grappa. And somewhere in an obscure circle of hell, in a small room of cubicles behind the empty water coolers and vending machines that don't take your money, the poets gnashed their teeth and wailed. And when that didn't quench the flames, we pulled your pretty flower print sundress up over your head and tried to smother it like you would with a blanket. But the dress was thin and was consumed. Apologies, but we had to try. Next, we buried your head like it was a campfire and left you there, doubled over ostrich style, until we were sure enough time had passed. But when we pulled your head out of the ground, nothing had happened, except your face had gone all blue. So we sat there warming ourselves while you got your wind back and speculated as to the cause of the fire, discounting the possibility of a divine origin. Perhaps you'd left your hair in the sun too long, or maybe too close to the oven, or one of the local children had snuck up while you weren't looking and covered your hair in a coat of petroleum and struck a match. None of us thought it might be connected to the sudden appearance of the wildebeests on the front lawn that morning. That would have been senseless. Eventually, we decided to leave you alone on the roof overnight to avoid starting a fire in the bedroom. Maybe, we thought, you could serve as a beacon to guide wayward airplanes winging their ways home in the dark so that their mothers, up late in empty hangars, would be delivered from their worries. While we waited for nightfall, I grilled burgers and toasted marshmallows. I'd never been much good with barbecues, and this was a rare opportunity to cook with a real fire. As I ate my dinner, I cursed the stupid wildebeests, though I had paid nothing for them. They didn't do anything but stand there, chewing cud, like they thought they were cows or something. How are we all doing? How are we doing on time? I think I'm doing okay on time. Let's see. This next one, the title was inspired by something that a friend of mine told me about a vacation his family took. Just the title, nothing else in the poem that just sort of falls from it. Flying up the Danube in a high-speed catamaran. The architect takes one last drag off one more final cigarette, breathes deeply, holds it, watches a city passing with the shore. Even as distant orangish blobs of sodium light drifting rightward off of starboard, it is capable of provoking disappointment. Its lumpen form bespeaks a lack of planning, an accumulation of scattered time, dictated by the needs of changing functions, its sense of purpose granted by familiarity. The ghosts of Goths, Vandals, and Vikings oaring in their courses, here and there alighting on the shore to pillage, rest, or taunt a party of phantom Romans who at this point in history would just as well be left alone. Exhales. The butt strikes the river. Waves V from twin hull tips, waltz in water, cascade and propagate. When light passes through twin slits, casting several bands along the wall, waves of interference, averages of all the paths it was possible to travel, it might imply dimensions beyond our own, a collapse of certainty. Well, water elaborates to dissolution. A faceless voice detaches from the crowd of strangers draped in shadow and the clink of ice and draining glasses, draws close, gains detail. Her tone conveys a distant nobility, a trace of Habsburg in the lines. Has your sister returned, or does she still wander in that vast wilderness? His face arches wryly. Fingers draw another from the pack, strike a sulfur match along the railing. This boat isn't as fast as advertised. He doesn't have a sister, hasn't had, at any rate, not for years. Let me see. This next one is presented without comment, and I shall, it's called Presented Without Comment, and I will present it without further comment. Presented without comment. It might strike us dead with feeling. We've been told such things can happen. How the unexpected appearance of a strange and glowing obelisk in the sandbox of a kindergarten playground might provoke an ancient and incomprehensible religious conversion, an estrangement from all accepted ways of being, a new social order established during recess, bleeding into the after hours carved up for play and practice, and marked most significantly by a spike in the profits of child psychologists. In this way, too, the rituals of the stage pull back the curtain, hit your mark, and break a leg, but not your character. Sing in us, O Muse, so we may dance a while in the fire and come away only a little burned. This thought touches close to something uncomfortable, which I have been trying to avoid. So I'll leave it a while and stroll the back streets of modern living, faintly singed, casually loveless, repeating again and again the same old lies oft rehearsed, spying a woman with a face of smoke, tussling gently the silken hair of indifference with a nervous laugh, anxious always that around the next corner may finally be that giant atomic reptile I know I must one day meet, gleefully torching with his piercing ray sections of the city I have not yet encountered, wanting only to squash me beneath his knobby rubber foot. I bet if I asked, he would do me this kindness, to look me in the eye and kill me with a word. This next one is I'm gonna read this because it's October's coming up and it's spooky season, and I love horror movies, and a lot of my friends love horror movies and get together online mostly now to watch horror movies. It's in a semi-arbitrary form that I came up with in a class on poetic form, and rather than explaining the apparatus behind it, just know that every line of the poem contains the title of a horror film released between 1931 and 1960 in sequential chronological order. Art Decades, Horror, 1931 to 1960. Dracula, you were beginning to test my patience with your tired rituals and your melancholy, you island of lost souls, you. And so what if the murders in the zoo remained unsolved even after years of searching your ditches, your morgues, your telltale heart? You couldn't Bride of Frankenstein your way out of this invitation to tea with Dracula's daughter, who waits restlessly for the return of Dr. X, who capers, it is said, in outer Mongolia, seeking the keys to the door with 7 locks, wherein what lies no man can say, vast riches, a king's secret, the silver cane that killed the wolfman. And yes, it is fair to say that we could be called cat people, but that doesn't make us any carnival of sinners, nor strangers to the realms of hygiene. Come, we are beckoned to the house of Frankenstein, his bride now gone to see a matinee of the zombies on Broadway. They play She's Not There to the face of marble in front row center, which frankly I'm scared to death of, and approaching as inevitably as bats emerge from belfries lined with creeper, unconcerned with their cliche, and every bit as elegantly dangerous as Anton Walbrook and the Queen of Spades. And suddenly feeling like a thing from another world, you approach, haltingly, the Black Castle, its towers and its parapets barely discernible as it swallows all light, and discover, on closer inspection, it is nothing more than a house of wax. It was only then you realized that you'd stood up the creature from the Black Lagoon who trawls his swamps for love, unintentionally, a kind of social dementia. Well, you'd always been the black sheep of the family, though it wasn't, as you thought, the curse of Frankenstein, which wasn't a curse so much as a series of bad decisions. Oh, the horror of Dracula and his tedious hors d'oeuvres, trotted out and left untouched at the start of every party, the candied tarantulas and a bucket of blood. Oh, let's call this what it is. Another day of blood and roses, to be lived like all the others and forgotten. Yes, you may be right to call me Mr. Sardonicus, though my grin isn't one of pleasure, more the result of sharing this apartment with the brain that wouldn't die. Oh, what we wouldn't give to return to the old dark house where all of this began. And I'll close with, for Kenneth, with the poem that I was very happy to have this poem selected, this poem in particular, for the Nash Prize, and thanks to the Poetry Center and Adrienne Matika for choosing this. It's called Father, What is the Distance Between Further and Farther? Maybe we should think of it as the distance between the world and the world, between love and its objects, between death and your place in the hierarchy of sin. These seem to me doubts of a lower order, and one does not wish to speak with them. So you are sent into the world without rituals or ablutions, remembering you are not Catholic, realizing now that this isn't even a church, but a mixture of shopping center and museum, shifting from one to the other depending on the angle of view, each one containing the same items, the same lighting, even in diffuse, coating the aisles of sculpted objects and framed images, gleaming stand mixers and diagrams of improbably winged aircraft. This is perhaps a museum of contemporary design, the mall of a second Renaissance, full with the distressing comfort of the absence of people. You dither at the little shop, tarrying over price tags. If only there were some correct combination of items to procure to set the ills of the world to rights. A large novelty pencil and an alabaster barracuda, 6 trinkets shaped like stars, a bottle cap, and an autographed copy of the Treaty of Ghent, a few postcards, and a sparkler. Outside, the procession of familiar strangers slows, approaches stillness without halting. The traffic of shadows elongates, gathering towards a meeting place. Maybe your mistake was in thinking that what you knew was known, that it mattered calling a thing one name on this day, the same on the next, that speech could be more than mere filigree, little chiaroscuros of affect. Thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the rock star move of reading the requested greatest hit last. But thanks very much, Billy. Really appreciate it. Our last reader this evening is Jenny Mueller, the author of 2 poetry books, State Park and Bonneville, both from Colorado's Elixir Press. In 2017, Fence Digital published Mooney, a book of poetry by the late Brian Young, which Jenny edited and for which she wrote an afterword. Currently, she's working on her 3rd book of poems and writing essays concerning sound imagery and images of starlight in literature. Recent poetry and prose work has appeared in Interim and Another Chicago Magazine. Jenny is professor of English at McKendree University in, do they pronounce it Lebanon or Lebanon in Illinois?
I say Lebanon.
Okay, well, I'm from Middle Tennessee, so I'm going to say Lebanon. Regardless, Jenny, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you out there in Facebook for coming. Most of the poems I'm going to read, with maybe one exception, and some way involve conversation, smuggled in or invented or overheard. The first one is the 3rd in a series. It's called State Park 3. Doors slamming inside the surf. We brought our chairs down to here. This coincidence, I said, of furniture. Installed in a folding, my chair lent its prettiest yellow notes to the beach origami, a skilled imitation of wings. A sandpiper lent out yellow notes too. In Phoenix, my mother-in-law kept folding the clouds up in boxes, a gesture towards ideas of order. Well, we'll never see those again, I began. Do you know, she had said, we used to watch the radio? Everyone knows about that. Here, the waves are dragging in exhibits of distance, whirling sensitive dials, making old-timey noises of farce and capsizement. I'm also reminded, I said, of a large prosthetic ear, those big listening trumpets with vanishing points. Did they used to shout back at the radio? Sometimes I yell into Skype and answer passing strangers on Bluetooth. Did our grandparents fear their sinking by radio, rearranging as they were the deck chairs on the wreck? There stands death, Rilke said, a bluish liquid. Water door flinging wide and banging on the hinge of the beach. There's another one smashed on another, I said, getting sleepy through parted lips of the waves. Okay, I'm gonna read 3. These are all really short. They range between 6 and 10 lines. First one's called Mornings in Wendover. Wendover is the town that's on the border between Nevada and Utah. So half of it is casinos. The overheard conversation here involved 2 casino workers who were talking about trying to get into a hair salon that supposedly could make their hair free of any drug residue for when the casinos took drug hair samples. Mornings in Wendover. Don't make us go down to the lobby for coffee. Don't make us go down to the C-store for food. Since there's no grocery here, everyone either eats or serves in a theme. Greasy breakfasts in the rainforest. Comb the drugs out of your hair. I'm going to strangle that rooster. This is Toward the Peak. Toward the Peak. Lotto thieves run Red River, an aspen trunk swears at 10,000 feet. Wouldn't surprise me, nor that the grudge was carried and knifed this far into wilderness. This involves an overheard conversation that I heard about 5 miles away from the start of the Yukon Trail in Alaska, and thus is called After the Gold Rush. A lady of Alaska remarked about the cottonwoods. Once she had had a sweater just like them, sequined. Another's mother killed her mice with antifreeze and a bait-smeared can. By the tens, they would drown with jewel-red eyes. This is called Aspen. Index finger laid at the lips, paper face, sand whisper. Give an old woman a doll made of aspen. She'll place it inside a trembling doll grove. Say thank you and such wind today. But you won't really hear her. You who have always watched out as if to see. And she sees you, one dark, regardless stare in a flimmering wood, a white cluster outbroken in eyes. This poem kind of breaks the conversation pattern. I think it's although I've written many poems in St. Louis, I think it's the only one that mentions any place in St. Louis. It's kind of an old poem, but it's also a new poem in that, for example, Doctors of Oklahoma are mentioned as a menace to women in this poem. Now, of course, they're kind of a savior for women from Texas. But other stuff that was current at the time is still going on. It's called Nuns Falling Downstairs. Sound of water falling through trees. No, it is wind sown with water's seed, carrying water's lines. Each sex finds the other one crude, knuckles under, One hand washes off the other. A lining falls out of me. This is a blessing, what keeps the lawmakers, the doctors of Oklahoma away. 88 Afghan girls are poisoned in their own villages. They must not go to school. They sicken, and I only hear their news while grading words next to a window. What is between us? Only this earth. Only this form accomplished in shadows, female of the species. What's black and white and red all over? I am. They are. Words are. The division of labor. Nuns falling downstairs. 2 Muscovy ducks escaped from the table and swim in the pond in Lafayette Square. Parents bring kids there to feed the birds bread, so the parents recall gentleness, what the child believes is power, creation swerving to hand. But outside my window, creation is building its ark. Sound of water dousing trees. Yellow poplars, I read. I can look up things' names. Hoist their flowers high. Tulips the size of little girls' hands. They go up to balance and rock in the blue. The girls said they smelled flowers and fell. Never the meek, and not even the earth, will inherit this earth anymore. I think I'm going to read just 2 more poems. One is one of those poems that starts with the first line. In the ordinary dark, at the forecast time exactly 6:31, I got up to see the blood moon set, showy and full in eclipse. Earth casts the shadow and also the glow, said the forecast. Dispersed light from all the Earth's sunrises, sunsets, leaks from our atmosphere out to the moon, touching it copper red. How lustrous, the face insisted from murk, the reach through cancellation, the rusted toy restored to our astonishment. But in sleepiness, I found nothing. The sky, a cold, dark blue socket, shut of stone light. Dawn came on moonless, tracking burnt orange in the grass. The yard's frosted edges fuzzed like softened aspirin. I had on your empty slippers. The Times says your clothing keeps feeling your sweat, holding your chemistry tight in its threads, turning new shades in the closet. Now we are almost exactly a year from your death. Shadow had clung to me out of the bed, and I turned with it back inside. You go on, a screen, enormously plain and darkening, spectacle laid across spectacle. You go on, a swallowing shadow. Meanwhile, I dreamt I was 2 movie stars kissing secretly inside a parked car. Their mouths smashed together, open but tongueless. And the last poem I'm going to read also starts, it's called To Read Ashbury, which is also its first line. It was composed while I, more or less almost at the same time while I was reading a book by Ashbury, and I was at a artist colony that was also a goat farm and goat milking collective. And then next to the artist colony / goat milking collective, there was a kids camp. And so all of that comes into this poem, as well as some stuff from Ashbury himself. And this is the last poem I'll read. To Read Ashbury. To read Ashbury while behind you at the spigot, a child draws some water for goats, answering somebody's questions. Between stanzas, you learn that Daniel is hunting, and this seems to mean he's gone away many days and nights. Last year, Daniel got an elk and a deer. This year, he almost got a deer, grabbing for his bow on the trunk seat too late, only one day before something. It's about tags. I suppose it's the end of archery season. No, her dad will not stay in a yurt on the land that her mom just sold him, but maybe a tent while he builds a house there. So next year she can ride her bike between her mom and dad. I wonder what's the ratio of elks to little girls in Ashbury, 2 to 1? I guess there's girls on the run, which must have some archers, if not wild American seasonal game. His poem in my hands already holds a milk pail and an arroyo. The girl totes her water off to real goats she'll milk. Sorry, say that again. The girl totes her water off to real goats she'll milk. Somebody gone away hunting. Ashbury could run with that. It sounds lonely. It sounds fine, eating elk the winter through with Mom and Daniel. And when the snow's not bad, pedaling down to Dad, by now at least into a trailer, entertaining Dad's weekly mustard questions, telling him all about the elk. Meanwhile, there have been kids weeping at the youth camp next door. Someone's husky puppy loped upon them in the field, then overdid its part in capture the flag. Well, don't you nip when you play? But some kids were shaken, though you know at least one child loved it all. He will never stop playing before everyone goes home with incredibly minor injuries. Then bam comes his shunning and shaming. Years from now, he'll be lucky to state his own confession. But now he's hungry, and the camp will eat outside, lots later than at home, and with stories before bed around a fire. After that, he wants to go back into the field and eat and tear into a real massacre of stars. Thank you.
Jenny, that was great. I really especially just appreciate the reminder that a poet can say something new and interesting about the moon in 2021. So thank you for that very much. We're going to bring the other poets up and have a brief conversation in the few minutes we have left. And I'm going to cut right to it. I'm really curious about, sometimes I'll just be honest and say that half these questions come from my own greedy curiosity to feed my own practice. But what are some of the things that each of you spend your time on that aren't poetry, but that feed your poetry? So what would make your poetry falter massively if you gave it up? I'm going to start with Felicia, especially because she mentioned roller skating, and somebody gave roller skating as the answer to that question recently. So Felicia,
Okay.
what about you?
I mean, I just started roller skating, so I don't know if I can even say that, but I guess I'm in school for physical therapy, so I feel like that comes up a lot in my work, and the poems I read today, it came up a lot. I don't know, besides that, just getting out in nature always helps. I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer.
No, that's fair. I mean, getting the hell out of the city absolutely matters for sure.
Yeah.
We'll just go in reading order. Billy, what about you? You are on mute, my friend.
I muted myself.
Great. It's cool.
As I need to do sometimes. It would be so easy just to say movies, which I think are part of it. I'm just ingest so many movies, but I could just randomly name detective novels, horror films, music, but really I think walks. I think I write a lot when I'm walking in the back of my head. The ideas seem to come better. I can't really sit in a chair.
For sure. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was I was able to take about an hour's worth of meetings out for a walk today too, and that enabled me to engage in the meeting far more productive than
Nice.
staring at a matrix of squares. So yeah, thank you for that. Jenny, what about you?
Well, walks was stolen from me. I got like all fired up, and then it was like,
I'm sorry.
but yeah, walks for
So
sure,
rude.
just because they get a kind of rhythm going. And, all kinds of other reading, often not poetry. And then sentences sometimes in prose. There are certain writers' sentences I really love. For years and years, it was DeLillo, not so much anymore. And then for a bunch of years after that, it was Bolaño in translation. And I would just always find myself writing after reading those prose writers.
Yeah, I find myself reading fiction for pleasure more often. I've finally discovered Philip Roth, and just the ability to construct a beautiful sentence is really, really something I steal from fiction writers often. So good. Well, thanks for that. I want to begin to close this out by having you all help us gather paradise, which is a practice I stole fair and square from Al Phil Reese, who hosts the podcast with the Poetry Foundation. And this is just an opportunity for us to mention something of note, something of interest, something that is kind of activating, sparking our brain or our heart in ways that are lovely, hopefully something connected to the poetry world. So let's go back in reverse order. Jenny, what is something in the world of poetry we should know about that you're engaging with these days?
So I'll pick two relatively recent things, only because they're really the only poetry books I'm reading right now. But I really like Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky. I think that's a great book. Heather McHugh, who's been writing since the 70s and then stopped writing for about 10 years or so, put out a book, I don't know, it's like 2 years old or something, called Muddy Matterhorn. And I like that a lot. And Heather is like really, if you like puns, you'll like her writing a lot. And then an old poem that I reread during the first pandemic summer and just profoundly was moved by it is Coleridge's poem, This Lime Tree Bower My Prison, which is just a great poem about friendship and distance and companionship. Just beautiful.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I second your vote for Ilya Kaminsky. That's a brilliant, brilliant book. Okay, Billy.
Something, my ability to read has become so attenuated over the course of the pandemic in a sustained way. And it's not, it's old, and I'm going to argue that it's poetry adjacent, but Library of America just put out the collected short fiction of Donald Barthelme. And I've been dipping into that, and often his stories are very strange and surreal, and they sort of seem to me sometimes to be sort of like prose poems as often as they are short fiction. And they're very short, so I've been able to dip into a couple every now and again, and it kind of gets my brain going. I would recommend if you like weird things.
Absolutely weird things, for sure. Felicia, what about you?
I feel like I haven't been reading that much poetry lately. I've been kind of reading nonfiction and fiction, but one book that I read last year was Clint Smith's Counting Descent, and I really enjoyed that book. So if you haven't read it, highly recommend it.
Yeah, he's amazing. Thanks for that too. I will close us by saying the Philip Roth novel that I'm reading is The Plot Against America, and I am not really fond of like historical fiction per se, but even though it was written something like 15, 20 years ago, the echoes with kind of the Trump administration and a lot of the things we were reckoning with during those years are really, really, that book is very eerily prescient. So highly recommend that one. Well, I'm going to begin to wrap us up by letting folks know that our next reading is October 26th. So mark your calendars. Again, we are consistently grappling with how to and if we will be in person or online. So we really appreciate all of our supporters' patience as we navigate these uncharted waters. Our readers next month will be Tim Hierdink, Tony Brewer and a familiar name, my predecessor in this role, Andrea Scarpino. So I'm really excited about that reading. Just a reminder, you'll be able to view tonight's reading on Facebook after tonight. So please do continue to engage with that after September 28th. So thank you so much to Felicia, to Billy, to Jenny for sharing your work with us. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much to Aaron for turning all of the internet and technology gears behind the curtain. Thank you to all of our viewers for showing up and choosing to share your time with us or on down the road after September 28th for checking this out after the fact. So have a wonderful and safe evening, everybody, and good night.
Night.